Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today's episode number 94. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko. I am a former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur, founder of Laborless, an immigration tech startup that automates H-1B compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which is a digital marketing agency for the immigration industry. And of course, which brings you this show. Today, I'm super excited. We have a special episode. Not just because this is an organization that does amazing work, but because we have two guests, which is rare for the GMI Rocket Show and which is going to be super fun. Our guests today are Danielle and Jeff Goldman, who are the co-founders of Open Avenues, which is an organization that helps companies avoid the challenges with H-1B cap issues and instead use cap-exempt, basically a cap-exempt strategy to hire folks. They're also launching a new portion or part of the organization called the Build Fellowship, which we're going to get into, which is scaling the whole cap-exempt strategy. It's a really interesting conversation, I think really timely, given that we're getting into, or we're basically in H-1B cap season. This is something is top of mind for a lot of people. So before we get into the show, I do want to say thank you to the main sponsor of the GMI Rocket Show, Lex Reception. So Lex Reception is a legal intake, reception, and client support service, and they provide they answer phone calls, they answer messages in real time, they schedule appointments, and they provide law firms with 24/7 specialists that will make sure that you never miss a prospect or a client that reaches out to you ever again. They also do kind of outbound sales. They will also proactively help immigration law firms reach out to people that get in touch with you through your law firm. They partner with and or integrate with tech that all the law firms use. So Clio, Practice Panther, LawPay, etc. And for listeners of the GMI Rocket Show, Lex Reception offers $250 off your first month of service. So check them out. Link in the notes below, or just reach out to them and say you heard about them on the show. Okay. Long introduction, but without further ado, thank you so much, Jeff and Danielle, for being here. And I'm excited to talk to you both and learn about what you're building.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having us, Roman.
Thank you.
And so we'll get into this. And for folks who don't know you, you don't just you don't coincidentally have the same last name. You're related. So off the top, we'll mention that. And of course, we'll get into the story, Jeff, how you built your practice and, got into immigration law, built your practice. And of course, Danielle, how you sort of joined, we're already involved in immigration and joined. For folks who are watching or listening in live, please leave comments, ask questions as we go. It's always fun to interact with folks who are listening as we go. So Jeff, I'll start with you, since this is a two-person episode, we'll kind of get into your background a little bit first, and Danielle, we'll jump in with your story, and then we'll kind of mesh it together and talk about Open Avenues and the Build Fellowship. Did I say the Build Foundation before? I feel like I may have.
You got it right.
Okay.
You got it right.
I got it right. Cool. So Jeff, you're born in Boston. You were raised in Boston. You live in Boston. I'm not a big baseball fan, so I don't care. I have no issues as a New Yorker. No, I'm just kidding. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what it was like, maybe growing up in Boston? And just, I love to ask that question and sort of piggyback on that to say, were you sort of an entrepreneurial type of person, given that you run your own practice, or studious, go to law school, get a good job, build a career? So I'm curious about that.
I think I was in between, actually. I was a little bit of an entrepreneur, maybe before anyone knew about entrepreneurs. But I really am a product of someone who I liked to study, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. In college, I was the king of taking the introduction course to every single department at college, and just looking to see what hit me that might be interesting. I applied to law school right out of college, mostly because my dad was a lawyer. It was the only thing I knew. And it seemed like it would be really interesting. Actually, my senior year, there was only one pre-law course they offered, and it was about defective products. It was really offered by the engineering department, but it absolutely captured my interest. We would read law cases about defective products and what the engineering viewpoint was of all of these issues. And I said, wow, I could read these cases every day. This is really interesting. So off I went to law school. I went to BU Law in Boston. Again, not exactly sure what I wanted to do. Took all the required courses, and when it came time for second and third year, and you could take whatever you want, I certainly did not take immigration, which was offered, but I thought I didn't even know what that was. Did not sign up for the immigration clinic. I just figured I would see what came after law school. I had a stint at the DA's office as a prosecutor, loved it. Went to work for a small law firm doing real estate closings, and I liked that too. But the entire change in my career took place when I did a real estate closing for a foreigner. He had come to the United States at the bottom of the real estate market with millions and millions of dollars of European money to buy up real estate at the bottom. And he became my biggest real estate client. And one day he said he wanted me to do his immigration. I didn't know what he was talking about. I said, go find an immigration lawyer. He said, no, you're my lawyer. You're going to do my immigration. He said, just humor me, learn about it. I took one course. It was an AILA course, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, happened to be offering a half-day introductory course, and it was by far the most interesting 5 hours I've ever spent. In college or law school, nothing captured me more, and I said, this is what I want to do. I told a couple of people, I took a course, and the next thing I knew, my phone rang. Can you help me with an immigration matter? I said, that's ridiculous. Wow. I don't even know what I'm doing, but took the case. It happened to be an H-1B case. I learned it, I filed it, it was approved, and the phone rang, and 2 more H-1Bs came. I did those, and then the phone rang, and I had 2 L1s and a green card, and then I had a family-based matter, and it just kept growing and growing. I ended up with 2 young kids. Danielle was 6, Alexa was 4, and my wife and I moved to Boston. I said, I can't do this in the suburbs. I can't hang a shingle and be an immigration attorney. Hung a shingle in Boston, and that was it. And the works just started coming in. I was fortunate with my timing. There were not 3,000 immigration lawyers in Boston at the time. There were 100, and works just started coming in. I joined AILA, more work started coming in. Briefly, my biggest break, I think, in my career was that a Russian man walked in without an appointment, and he said, I need help filing an extraordinary ability green card. You know what that is, don't you? I said, of course I know what that is. I had no idea what that was. I sat there and took notes and notes and notes. And at the end of the hour, he said to me, you actually don't know what you're doing, do you? And I said, you're correct. He said, oh, well, today's your lucky day. I actually don't want to hire you to do this. I did it already. I actually just want you to read what I did. I said, I can do that. I stayed up half the night reading, looking on the internet, came up with 10 good suggestions. The next thing I know, he hired me, we filed, it was approved. He then invited me to MIT to speak to the MIT Russian Club. And they did a joint program with me as the only speaker with the MIT Chinese Student Scholars Association. I walked into an MIT classroom, there were 100 people. I left with $40,000 worth of work.
Wow.
All of those petitions were approved, and that's just what launched my career. And to this day, extraordinary ability, national interest waiver, and O1 visa is what I'm doing every day. I now have a law firm with 31 people. We're only doing immigration. Most of us are doing employment-based, a few doing family-based. All of us doing pro bono political asylum. But it's been a great ride. I've loved every second of it. I feel blessed about how the opportunities came early on. And that's my background.
That's amazing. I mean, I have so many questions, and also there's so many really nice lessons in there. I mean, for example, the wherewithal to say I can't hang a shingle. By the way, this is probably what, in the 90s, late 90s?
Late 90s.
Mid to late 90s. So, the internet was available, but very scarcely. Not a lot of people had it. Certainly there was no social media. Right. There was no iPhone. It's really hard. You'd have to go on newspapers, and virtual meetings basically weren't much of a thing either. And so if people wanted to come see you, which of course they would, you're their attorney, it's a sensitive matter, especially if it's a personal immigration case, they're sharing personal information. They'd have to drive out and whatnot. And so I think that's it's really prescient, but also, I guess, obvious to say, look, we can't do this in the suburbs. As much as it is a nice life to live in the suburbs, especially with 2 young kids, work has to be in a bigger city. Obviously, so when you started taking those cases, or I guess when you took that first one, were you working at another firm already, or were you already on your own, but not doing immigration, kind of doing whatever?
When I first started, I was at a small law firm doing real estate closings, and it was my real estate client who launched me because he wanted me to learn immigration. I will say I had an advantage when I decided I love this, I'm going to hang a shingle and do it. When I hung my shingle, I did have lined up about 30 real estate closings for the next 3 months, and I kept those. So I was blessed that I could hang a shingle, but I had income with a 6-month bandwidth. But I'm telling you that at the end of the 6 months, I had no real estate left. I didn't want to do real estate, and I was depending on my family of 4 on what was coming in. And I really was lucky. Interesting, Roman, back then, the AILA Infonet, which is a place where immigration attorneys post questions and other experts answer, it was vibrant, and every AILA expert was on all day long because it was new. And the internet was new, and they were answering. I would get up every single morning before 5 a.m. and spend 2 hours just reading questions other people were posting and reading the answers, and then reading the questions and reading the answers. And I didn't care if it was HL, family-based. Even I was reading the removal because I didn't know if I would be a removal immigration lawyer. I realized you can't do it all. So and the work that was coming in was employment-based. So that's how I ended up focusing on employment-based. But that's really was my start, was just deciding I've got to learn everything I can learn.
And the reason I even asked that question was because you had to step away from a job, right? So you took a major risk. Obviously, a very great idea to have something lined up to give yourself a buffer financially, especially, you have family that depended on you. I'm asking specifically this question because, this show, different people watch it, but ultimately I do this show for me 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Although honestly, when I was still practicing, I wish I had the show because maybe I would have started my own law firm. Starting a business just wasn't even in my head. But it's a risk. You take a risk when you start a business. It's also nerve-wracking to quit a job. I mean, it's not a fun conversation to go to your boss, especially if you like them and you're building your career with them, and say, "Hey, I'm sure you've lost employees at some point. It sucks to lose an employee. It sucks to have that conversation." So was your employer at the time, the law firm, were they open to you, leaving? Were they supportive? They
were supportive from day one.
Yeah.
They were letting me take immigration clients when I didn't know what I was doing. I probably lost money with my first numerous. And they said, "That's okay. This is a great way to grow and expand. You can do it."
Wow.
And actually, they were supportive of me leaving and opening a shingle. And not that they ever referred immigration work to me because none really came their way, but it was a very positive transition.
Yeah, I love that. So, and before Danielle, I want to turn to you. Thank you for being so patient. But Jeff, I want to ask you, kind of lastly, do you, and maybe you don't know the answer to this question, but do you take yourself as a risk taker? In the sense that you broke off on your own. I mean, it's a risk. You were learning as you go. You waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, reading AILA Infonet does not guarantee you work, right? But mouths need to be fed, mortgage or rent needs to be paid, etc. Do you feel like you were a risk taker at the time? Like, has your risk profile maybe changed over time? I'm curious as to like that entrepreneurial, I guess, mindset. If you had it, if you just forced yourself into it, if you developed it over time.
I was a risk taker, but I had the knowledge that I did a good job and the phone rang twice. And I did a good job the next time and the phone rang 4 times. I said, that's a risk I can take. I don't know if I would have done it had I not really had a feeling that work is going to come in. And it worked out amazingly well. But though, boy, what a boost of confidence to have the phone ring a couple of times when you do a good job. But that had never happened in my 4 years of doing real estate. You could kill yourself through a grueling closing, all sorts of problems. It works. You close. You don't get a phone call saying, "Hey, heard you did a good job." Because when the economy is good, every lawyer and his brother is a real estate attorney. And so even the clients you do a great job for, they know other real estate attorneys and they have relatives who become a real estate attorney. So I really started thinking, where am I heading with that? Look what happened with immigration. No one else knew an immigration attorney except for me. And every immigrant knows 1,000 people who need a good immigration attorney. So I've just been so blessed to get into this field.
Yeah, and I love that, sort of market analysis, whether you sort of officially looked at it that way or not. You looked at the need, you looked at the your competitive landscape, and I guess that kind of mitigates risk a little bit, right? Even if you don't know what's coming, you can look at the landscape and say the likelihood that this will work out versus competing with everyone out there doing real estate is pretty good. So I love that. And okay, so Danielle, I want to turn to you again. Thank you for hanging out quietly, patiently.
I love hearing the story again.
Honestly, sometimes I'll have guests. I had Angelo Paparelli on my show, and he shared a story. And I think one of his siblings or one of his family members, I assume because they had the same last name, connected with me on Facebook and was like, "Oh, I didn't know XYZ story."
Yeah.
So sometimes one of the things I love about having these interviews and spending time on learning about people's backgrounds is just sometimes memories pop up that you maybe don't actively think of, but perhaps were crucial to the journey of getting to where you are now. Okay, so Danielle also grew up in Boston or Boston area, I guess, right? With a father who's an attorney. I guess by the time you were younger, young girl or teenager, Jeff was already doing immigration law, so you probably heard a lot about it. What do you have any distinct memories or initial, initial memories of when you started to realize what immigration is, what impact it has on the people and the clients that that the firm worked at? Like, what was your relationship with this notion of immigration law when you were younger?
Yeah. Jeff talked a lot about how he does business immigration and that's his focus. But over the years, Jeff and my mom actually too, always were giving time to asylum seekers, to families, to individuals who were coming for help. And everyone, as Jeff said, in the community came to him as an advisor, would refer individuals that they met who needed support in the area. And we lived, in an area where there were a lot of immigrants in the greater Boston region. And one of I was 10 years old and I distinctly remember, it became a huge theme of my life was this interaction. But we went to go visit a family who came over from Haiti, and they came to Boston. They'd been persecuted because he was a journalist, very successful in Haiti. He had young kids and a wife, and they all landed in Boston with a bag and nothing else. And Jeff got a call and showed up, and we all showed up as a family with clothes and toys at public housing that they were put in. And I met these kids and I didn't know what to do. I was 10 years old. So I sat down and I played with the baby boy, and that was how I could help in that moment. And about a year later, we were still in touch with them and had built a relationship with this family. And I ended up becoming the godmother to a new baby from this family. And Aisha is now 21 years old today and is my goddaughter. And it's all because of that. And it just speaks volumes to the values that I learned really early on about people and the life experiences that they have and have had prior to coming to the United States and what we can do to impact their lives for the better.
I love that. That's really powerful. Did they get their, I'm assuming their immigration status was all sort of all worked out?
Yeah. Jeff handled the case for the entire family, and it's actually quite a success story, I have to say, because Michigan just won the national championship. That their son actually is the captain of the Michigan football team today.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, so he'll probably end up in the NFL, and it's just a testament to how beautiful, this experience, this American experience can be when folks are given the opportunity.
I just got chills thinking about that. That's unbelievable. Did you take this sort of idea? You're 10 years old, still in elementary school, obviously. Did you take something away from this that you held on to throughout, I don't know, high school? Obviously, at that point, you're 14, 15, 16, 17, thinking about college, starting to think about future. Did any of this have an impact on, those thoughts or things you did in school, or, I don't know, clubs you were part of, et cetera?
Always. It was a constant theme. In high school, we had to write speech and debate classes. And I remember writing about the DREAM Act when it first was proposed. I have that somewhere in my drawer, trying to explain, getting up in front of my class, trying to explain why the DREAM Act should be passed for these dreamers in the United States. I joined the student immigrant movement, SIM, and I went to this conference at UMass Boston at age 15, 16, and I was the youngest person in the room, and I gave a speech they had everyone write down like why they cared about the DREAM Act. And they asked me to get up and give my speech because I was the only non-immigrant in the room. And they said, thank you. Everyone thanked me for being an advocate. And I didn't understand why people were thanking me. This was just something that I understood was, that these were individuals who deserved my attention, who deserved my support. And so, that was all based in, again, just the value of getting to know families and the experience that people were living led me into those rooms and spaces and into college volunteering for the Tennessee Immigrant Refugee Rights Coalition as I was at Vanderbilt. And I always, enjoyed working with the families and the people who I wanted to, acknowledge needed a welcoming as they arrived and figured out their future.
And you even, I mean, and based on your LinkedIn profile, right, even while you were in high school, and perhaps even afterwards, you were helping folks with citizenship applications, I'm assuming, like in community centers or, I don't know, churches, wherever those tend to pop up. So you, after college, you went to Vanderbilt, you graduated, and I would think, if you asked me, where do I assume Danielle would work after college, given all of this, I would think, a refugee nonprofit, or maybe an immigration law firm as a paralegal, maybe go straight to law school and, follow the footsteps of the family. But you went in a slightly different direction. You worked you were kind of a consultant, right? In global health space. Can you talk a little bit about maybe why you made that decision or what you learned from that? Because you've obviously made your way back into the immigration space, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I was a sophomore in college, I decided I was going to law school, and I took the LSAT and I took it again. And I'm not a test taker. It's not who I am. That's not how my brain works. I have a lot of great skills, and that's just not one of them. And I decided that I was going to take that as a sign that I should do something else. And I am so grateful that I went into consulting after school. I wanted to work in the public sector, but at the intersection of the private sector. I didn't really know what that meant, but I was saying it in my interviews. And I like any college graduate, you like one class, right? You like one subject, you have values that you care about. I definitely knew I cared about people. I cared about, ideally doing something in the social impact space. but I was really interested in going into the private sector in some way and getting business skills. So I went into consulting. I ended up working at a boutique firm, which was the best. It was the best decision I could have made at the time. I was given so much autonomy. It was a women run and powered consulting firm. I saw women as partners who had young kids. I was given the ability to lead a junior associates club, and I led the health and wellness club, and I learned how to have a voice in a place where I was very young and new, and I was given a lot of autonomy. And you know how it goes. If someone above you leaves, you end up taking their work. And within months of me getting there, my two bosses left. Within a year was running our entire account for Johnson and Johnson, and was doing consulting work across the entire company at Johnson and Johnson. It was a really cool experience, and I learned to talk to anybody about anything. I didn't know one thing about health before I got there, about global health, about that world, and I learned you can learn a lot fast, and it gives you the confidence to be in spaces and rooms and with a lot of different people and ask questions and have conversations and problem solve and have the confidence to do that. And I'm really grateful that I actually started there in terms of skills building after school.
Yeah, I mean, my first question was, or my first thought was, wow, the level of confidence you need to, all right, great, you stepped into a role as a junior associate, and then, very shortly thereafter, you get this huge workload handed to you, and you have to somehow manage it. I mean, I can't imagine. Was that like a stress? I mean, were you like, I don't know if I can do this, or were you like, let's go for it? And
Oh, so it's so funny reflecting on it, because I will remember, you can feel it. You're brought back to that feeling of anxiety when you think about being in those moments. I remember getting on the New Jersey Transit and being so nervous. I'm by myself in my suit about to go have meetings with these leaders at Johnson & Johnson at age 23. I mean, it's not a normal situation, but the partners had faith in me, and I therefore had to have faith in myself. And it showed me as a leader today, if you believe in people, they will rise to the occasion. And that was a really amazing learning. And I had extreme moments. I mean, I found myself at the World Economic Forum in Davos representing Gilead Pharmaceuticals, and had to figure out how to navigate these conversations with world leaders. I mean, it was these are crazy moments that you have to find like strength deep within you to be able to hold yourself in those, and have confidence to just approach conversation. And it's great skill sets to have.
Yeah, totally. I was actually talking to someone the other day about how intense, I don't know how intense the work here was, but, for you work at a place like McKinsey or Boston Consulting or any of these other consulting firms, you work nonstop. And you often you may work on a project for half a year within one industry, within one vertical. And then your next project is something completely different, totally different industry, different type of business model. And you have to become an expert, crash course in the industry and the business, et cetera. And yes, some people stay and become partners, but many, many people, ex-McKinsey is a badge, right, of honor, and others, similar ones, because it shows that you can learn quickly. You can find confidence just out of nowhere. You have to find it. You can manufacture confidence, I suppose. So I love that. So, okay. And you spent, Davos that must've been fun. So I love this. And I want to jump into what Open Avenues was, let's say, like how it got started. And also eventually, obviously, what it's grown into. I want to take a quick pause just to say thank you to the second sponsor of this episode, which is DocketWise. A lot of folks in the U.S. immigration space know DocketWise, but in case you don't, they are an all-in-one case management platform for immigration law firms, and they're basically best in class for immigration forms. They have super customizable questionnaires, which is kind of how they started. integrations with all sorts of startups, including mine, actually, Laborless. They have great customer service. And what I really love actually about DocketWise, in addition to their tech, as somebody in marketing, they have a really great blog. They actually released a podcast as well. One of their co-founders was my very first episode. So for folks who want to learn about how DocketWise started, go check out episode 1 of GMI Rocket Show, and please ignore how terrible I was. So anyway, thank you, DocketWise, for sponsoring the show. Check them out at docketwise.com or visit the link in the show notes. Okay, so let's talk about how Open Avenues just first started, right? It's obviously gone through a couple of iterations. The first one that we spoke about, prior to us going live, was really interesting. Didn't know about it. So I guess, Jeff, if I can turn back to you, how did this come about within your practice, just within your concept of how to serve the immigrant community outside of just an ordinary law firm?
Sure. One quick thing before I start. My law firm is very happy DocketWise customers. So I'll throw that in.
I love that. That was not planned, folks. Not planned. So thank you, Jeff.
As Danielle said, my family was involved in so much of what I do, my wife especially. And in 2017, my wife and I were so busy helping our clients, not my business clients, not my extraordinary ability clients, but we did so much pro bono asylum that every single one of our pro bono asylum clients became a friend. And my wife was on the phone with them all the time, and we were delivering furniture and clothing. And the next thing I knew, we paid for somebody's nursing program. And my wife and I said, we should start a nonprofit. I mean, we had just given out so much money that maybe we'll start a nonprofit and see if we can collect money to help these people who need help. So we started it. It was very slow. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have time. She was working, I was working, but we were plodding along, doing a little bit of this and that. And then in 2018, the border crisis hit, where ex-President Trump was separating parents and children, and everybody was shocked. Every immigration lawyer said, "What can I do? What can I do?" And we said, "What can we do? We want to do something. We didn't know what to do." When all of a sudden the phone rang at my office, and my receptionist said, "Jeff, there's a woman on the phone, and she says that she's been separated from her child. Can you take the call?" I said, "Sure." So I got one of my Portuguese interpreters, paralegals, and it turned out this woman had just landed at Logan Airport, didn't know where her child was. She had been separated at the border. She had been in a cage for 10 days. They wouldn't tell her anything about where her child was, and they put her on a plane to Boston without discussion. And she landed at Logan, and she was by herself. She called her mother in Brazil, hysterical, and the mother in Brazil said, "Call Jeff Goldman." Now, we have never figured out how that happened. I have a lot of Brazilian clients, and that must be how it happened, but she called. So my law firm went into all hands on deck mode. 2 lawyers and 2 paralegals did nothing for 3 days but work on this case. And we ended up finding the child through phone calls. He was in a facility in Chicago. We called a Chicago law firm and said, "We're flying to Chicago. We're bringing the mother. We're filing suit in federal court, but we need someone to be with us because we're not licensed in Illinois." They said, "We're in." And this was all out of pocket. We flew 2 lawyers, a paralegal, and the mother to Chicago. And we won in 1 day. We filed, we asked for an emergency hearing. The judge said, "Come in right now." And he ordered Homeland Security to release the child within 1 day, or there would be serious consequences. And by the end of that day, the phone call came, "Come pick up the child." It was unbelievable. By the time they flew back to Boston, I had already been on the media 10 times. MSNBC wanted me, and thank God Danielle was with me when we went to the studios in New York, because I really couldn't have done that if she hadn't been with me. But we took on 11 more pro bono cases of 11 more families, and everything was changing about this nonprofit. Now we needed the nonprofit to go full force. Danielle said, "Dad, this is ridiculous. You and Mom cannot handle this nonprofit. I'm taking this on. And she did. And she helped us throw a fundraiser in Boston that was unbelievable. She organized the whole thing. That would all started in May. By August, we had 240 people in a hotel ballroom raising tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars to help these families.
Wow.
And then Danielle said, I think I better quit my job and help you because you don't know what to do with that money. And so it was a blessing, a blessing. Danielle, I'll let you add to that part of the story, but an important transition piece is, as Danielle was here thinking of where are we heading with this nonprofit, I was obsessed with the idea of cap-exempt H-1B visas and how a cap-exempt organization such as a university could hire a part-time H-1B worker, get them a cap-exempt H-1B, and suddenly any employer in the US could immediately avoid the lottery and file a concurrent cap-exempt H-1B. I had been doing this for 3 years at that point with UMass Boston. We started a program hugely successful. It's still there today. It's known as the Global Entrepreneur in Residence Program. It was hugely successful, but I was talking to Danielle about my frustration that the UMass Boston GEIR could not scale. They just didn't need that many foreigners. My law firm alone was getting 5 calls a week of people who needed a solution because they weren't winning the H-1B lottery. And Danielle said, wait a second. We have a nonprofit that's thriving right now. What if we just get affiliation agreements with universities? Now we're a cap-exempt organization. We can scale. I'm like, whoa, wait, this is so amazing. Danielle, I'll let you take the story from here, but this was the genesis of Open Avenues Foundation.
I still remember those car rides where we brainstormed the first iteration of what Open Avenues Foundation could be. But the whole idea of supporting these immigrants who were coming and families who were being separated from the border. I mean, I was sitting at my desk in New York, like so many people watching the news, just saying, what can I do? Like, how can I be helpful right now? And my parents were, had filed for this 501c3 status for this organization that didn't have a name. We named it Open Avenues Foundation and started a campaign. I mean, it was really a campaign. We raised $300,000 in 6 months. We had a network of 1,500 volunteers around the country that we partnered with to support them with our 501c3 status. And ultimately, it was never intended to be a long-term initiative, but we supported 250 families nationwide with legal support, with mental health care and housing. That was what we decided to do. And it was a really successful campaign. And I frankly wanted to do more. I mean, I loved building it, leading it, seeing the results that we could make when we actually just took action ourselves. And that was so fun. And Jeff, we said, what's next, right? We'd been successful. We gave all the money away. We reunited these families. And that was when we had these car rides and we were, driving who knows where to meet which family we were, going to connect with. But we ended up talking about becoming a nonprofit affiliated with universities and to demonstrate the value that foreign nationals could have if they had a pathway to stay here. So same concept of we cared about showing the rest of the world who these people actually are that are coming and building companies and the scientists and the engineers and the value of individuals. And that was the core of why we decided to continue to build programming through Open Avenues Foundation.
Yeah, and honestly, the name rather, it fits both scenarios. So how did you guys pick Open? I mean, I can see how it, it's an open avenue, it's an open road you're giving, but I don't know if there was like a story behind that or not.
Jeff had come up with the name Immigrant Avenues, I think, prior to Open Avenues, and we were playing around with it. And immigrant is a very loaded word. I mean, especially after comprehensive immigration reform, the term immigrant gives a reaction to people. People have a reaction when they hear the term across this country, and some people hear it negatively and some people hear it and it's part of their story. It's part of everyone's story, but people don't acknowledge it. I think that we wanted to create something that was going to be approachable by everyone in this country. And so open avenues, this idea of opening avenues for the best and the brightest and the individuals who need pathways and to get out of dire situations, right there. It had a broadness that we felt like we could build off of, and the approachability that was going to be necessary if we're going to build something that is really, in this space that was accepted and respected across the aisle.
So can you talk a little bit about, and Jeff, I know you kind of mentioned it, the crux of what you wanted to scale, but can you talk a little bit about what Open Avenues does, but at least did back in the day? How did it work? I know we're going to get to the transition and sort of what the next steps are for the organization, but let's go back to 2019, 2020, 21, the last few years. If I asked you, what does Open Avenues do? How do you explain that to both, by the way, partner universities, the folks, and also importantly, the for-profit entities that are looking to hire foreign nationals and, looking at ways that they can solve the H-1B lottery issue, basically?
I think I want to start with the H-1B lottery conundrum, just to make sure all your listeners understand. H-1B is the most common way that foreign professionals come to work in the United States. Every year, the demand is over 500,000 foreign professionals not only want to come to the United States, but they have a U.S. employer to sponsor them. But there's a cap of 85,000 every year. And because the demand way exceeds the supply, the U.S. Immigration Service runs a lottery every March. And it's called the H-1B lottery. They pick out the 85,000 winners, and that's it for that year. So there's hundreds of thousands of people shut out, tens and tens of thousands of companies who rely on these people. They're at a loss. They don't get the talent they need. They're not able to find it in the US, and it's a big problem. Congress said there are 4 organizations that are exempt from the cap. They can always file an H-1B at any time without winning the lottery. And those 4 organizations are universities, nonprofits affiliated with the university, nonprofit research organizations, and government research organizations. So I think we're all familiar with that. A university, they have a star they can file an H-1B for that person. But I think that was known by most immigration lawyers. But what really wasn't thought about much was a separate law that says once somebody is inside the United States in H-1B status, whether because they won the lottery or because they're employed by one of those 4 cap-exempt organizations, but if they're in the US in H-1B status, any employer can immediately file a concurrent H-1B without winning the lottery. And back when I started the UMass program, I was just obsessed with that idea. Well, how could that be? Really? So we tried it. I tried it with one client. We got them a community college in Western Massachusetts to sponsor them for a 5-hour-a-week job solely so that this person's for-profit company that was normally subject to the lottery could quickly file a cap-exempt. It worked. We got the community college a part-time H-1B. The for-profit company immediately filed. That was approved. It was unbelievable. So I knew the model would work. The UMass program was working, and it got great PR, big success story. But as I said, it wasn't scaling. And honestly,
and you got the credibility of working with Governor Deval Patrick at the time, and venture capitalists in Boston who knew that this was needed as well.
Yeah, the VC community really spearheaded this. They were determined to help their portfolio companies get around this crisis. They're the ones who were able to get Governor Patrick from Massachusetts back in 2014, to sign on to this and to add a small line item in the state's budget to support this. It was just $30,000, but it meant the world to us. It gave us credibility. It gave us talking points. It led to Governor Patrick publicly endorsing us, and it was a big moment. And UMass became inundated with people wanting this. It led to numerous other colleges around the country hearing about this and wanting us to start. I ended up being an advisor to New York, California, Colorado, all these states who wanted to start the same program. And various iterations have started across the country, with one of the bigger successes being Detroit, which has a very thriving entrepreneur in residence program. So the fact was, though, it wasn't scaling. And this UMass program could not even help my clients, enough of my clients, never mind everyone else's. So that's when Danielle and I said, let's take the same model. Let's put these people to work. And Danielle had the brilliant idea. She'll tell you right now, how are we going to put people to work for 5 hours a week? And Danielle, I'll let you take this part.
Yeah, the reality is that if we were going to start a program that was going to scale a unique visa solution for foreign talent, it had to be legitimate, and it had to add value to the universities in a way that everyone could understand, including USCIS. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to make it for the reasons that I talked about throughout this entire story, the values of why we wanted to start this, where we believe that foreign nationals have value to add to US society. And we wanted to create and open new pathways for foreign nationals to not just start their own companies, to not just have jobs, but also to show that when these individuals stay here, that they could actually move this entire country forward. And the way to do that is to train American students, to train the students at our universities to get these jobs in the future. That is something that everyone can get behind. Not just bringing over foreign talent and creating pathways for them to get visas, but also to have us as a nation work on building up our future workforce in high demand fields, in these industries that are most innovative and evolving. So we decided that we would build a program that hired foreign nationals part-time, sponsored them for these cap-exempt H-1Bs, but that trained students at any school that wanted to partner with us and affiliate with our nonprofit. So we started in Boston. We found Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology, which is a small technical school in Boston with a very innovative president, Aisha Franklin, who I respect immensely. And they said, if you could connect us to the startup ecosystem in Boston, we would be really excited to affiliate with you and have our students get access to these startups and to the broader, to nationwide, to programs. But we started in Boston. This was pre-COVID, before all education could be done remotely. So we started Open Avenues Foundation's fellowship program, the Global Talent Fellowship, and brought our first companies on board. Of course, we did it for free for the first companies that said, yeah, we would like to sponsor cap-exempt H-1B. It took a lot of pitches to get a company to say yes. I think one of our first pitches was actually to Wayfair, which I think, I wish that I had waited a few more, maybe even a few years to pitch Wayfair on our membership solution, but it was a really exciting time.
And just to dive a little bit into the detail of how it works. So Open Avenues affiliates with an existing college, university, et cetera. Who finds the talent? Like, how does the interaction happen? I guess let me put myself in the shoes of a for-profit, a company, right? I hear about the organization. I like what you're doing. I like the value that you're bringing. And I also like the notion that I can avoid the H-1B lottery. So win-win-win. Okay. So I come to you and I say, all right, help me. How is this going to work? I have this person who is a skilled, technical, let's say software engineer or something like that. what are the sort of steps along the way, or like, how, can you build an example? Just, and really, I'm doing this so that folks who are listening can get a really better understanding of how it works and whether they can fit into this somehow, whether they are a university, whether they're a company that may be interested in working with you, maybe if they're a candidate that can somehow reach out. So how
Yeah.
can you build like a fake case for me if I'm a for-profit and say I have this foreign national, H-1B is not working out, or we don't even want to deal with the lottery? Help us, please.
Totally. So Open Avenues Foundation is partnered with schools, and those schools get access to our entire cohort of fellows. So that's the benefit that these schools get. And our fellows are foreign nationals who are nominated by companies. So software companies and, engineering companies and even financial institutions have key talent that are put into the H-1B lottery every year. And for individuals who are not selected, or for individuals who have OPT that is expiring outside of the lottery cycle, or for individuals who are coming from abroad who need a solution, the cap-exempt H-1B is an opportunity for them. So companies nominate a candidate to our program. We do an evaluation to make sure that they're qualified for an H-1B and that they're interested in working with students for 5 hours per week. We do that evaluation, the interview, we work with lawyers to make sure this is going to work. And then we partner with the company that wants to keep that foreign national. So the company that has nominated their employee ultimately partners with Open Avenues Foundation and financially supports the fellowship program. Then we hire the foreign national for 5 hours per week. We sponsor them for a cap-exempt H-1B. And once approved, immediately after, the company that partnered with us and nominated the candidate files the concurrent cap-exempt H-1B. And as soon as that petition is put into the mail and they have a receipt notice, the individual can start working for that company. So 150 foreign nationals have gone through the program in the last few years, and they are all coming from companies that are desperately trying to find solutions to retain them.
For the 5 hours of work a week, does it have to relate to their expertise? Does it have to relate to the work that they're doing at the for-profit that's, nominating them and supporting this fellowship? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It has to be a specialty occupation. That's the heart of H-1B. So Open Avenues Foundation, if the guy has a degree in software engineering, we're going to put him to work for 5 hours a week, leading an experiential learning opportunity for our college students in software engineering. And taking them through a project from beginning to end, something they really in depth at a level they would not have at a normal internship, and a great opportunity that they just wouldn't have otherwise. For many of these students, this is the first foreign national they've met. That's one of the big pluses, because then they tell their parents, you won't believe what's going on in this experience I'm having, and the guy teaching me, wow, what an interesting guy, and this is such a help to my career. So there's benefits right from the beginning of connecting people this way. But yes, the job for 5 hours a week is leading these experiential learning opportunities in a specialty occupation.
Is that at the university?
Excuse me?
Sorry, is that at the university or the affiliated school?
Before COVID, we were doing our best to do these at a university where the students were. Since COVID, it's all been remote, and it's working out beautifully. It's actually helped us expand across the country. So now we have affiliated universities across the U.S., and their students can be working with a life scientist, a biologist in Miami, and she's leading this fabulous 5 hour a week program for students all across the U.S. remotely.
Right. That's actually amazing, because if you, with virtual work, you can support folks all over the country.
COVID was the best thing that happened. Yeah, COVID was the best thing that happened to Open Avenues. I before that, we were driving our fellows to the personally driving our fellows to the universities for these classes and sessions, and then this enabled us to completely expand nationally.
And the companies, the for-profit company, they're aware, obviously, that there is this 5-hour-a-week requirement. I mean,
Yeah.
they have to have both concurrent H-1Bs in order for the other to continue to exist, right?
If the fellow stops working concurrently with Open Avenues, the Open Avenues H-1B will be revoked, and so will the for-profits company H-1B. So they must have both concurrently, and the for-profit companies know about it and support it.
Right.
Individuals stay in our fellowship program until they have another solution. So every year, the fellows in our program all enter the H-1B lottery again in hopes that they're able to win and exit our program. That was built into our model. We know that we are an interim solution for individuals as they file green cards, as they prepare cases to make a better case for an O1, or as they wait to win that lottery year over year.
Yeah, no, and that, I love that, because you're, from the get-go, you're saying, look, we're not trying to, hold you here unnecessarily. We want this to be a way for you to stay in the US, to work, to provide value to the company, et cetera, but still have the option of, other visa, other NIV, O1s, whatever it might be at this point, EB2 NIW, EB1, I mean, whatever it is that they're, that they're eligible for. But without having to do it from your home country or whatever. Okay, so I love that. And thank you for the detail, because, even for myself, I mean, H-1B is my world. But even when I practiced, I never worked, first of all, with cap-exempt H-1Bs, although I obviously understand the concept there, but concurrent H-1Bs, never dealt with them. So this is a really interesting way to use a nuanced sort of, sliver of the H-1B program in a way that gets around the challenge that is the bulk of the H-1B program. So I want to, I guess, transition to the Build Fellowship, which is the current next iteration of, what Open Avenues is doing. So can you talk, either one of you, whoever wants to jump in on this, can you talk a little bit about what the Build Fellowship is and sort of how it's grown out of Open Avenues and what the idea behind it is?
We spent 5 years building a model that we are so proud of and that has been so successful in terms of the structure and compliance behind running this cap-exempt H-1B program. And we, just like when Jeff said there has to be a way to offer the GEIR program to companies, to mid to senior level employees at companies, we were in this moment where we said, what's next, right? We're doing this for 100 people per year. We can do more. And we should leverage this expertise to enable more individuals to access cap-exempt H-1B positions part-time. The demand has been unbelievable, and we needed to figure out how to meet it in a way that continues to add value to the United States. And if we didn't do it, so many individuals, the most innovative individuals from around the world, would not have the opportunity to build here. I mean, that's really what we feel is at stake, because so many people need this bridge to start their companies, which could change the future of this country and the world. We need it to stay competitive. So what we decided to do was take the cap-exempt H-1B model that is a nonprofit affiliated with university, and all of the systems that we have built over 5 years, the compliance, the petition development, the monitoring of these fellows long-term, and the programming it takes to ensure they're employed actively 5 hours a week, doing work that adds value to our schools and partners, and take that and replicate it and work with nonprofits across the United States to affiliate with universities and to launch fellowship programs. So we rebranded the Global Talent Fellowship that ran out of Open Avenues Foundation. We started a new entity called the Build Fellowship, which is partnering now with nonprofits to launch fellowship programs that will also offer 5-hour per week positions for companies to nominate their talent to work part-time, adding value to universities. And we just signed our first nonprofit partner, which is Dream Venture Labs out of Boston. and they're going to offer part-time fellowships for foreign national founders in the Boston area and beyond. And so we're going to be launching that in the next month, as well as a partnership with George Washington University down in DC that will be launching later in February, that will enable foreign national founders to and talent to apply for part-time build fellowship positions down in the DC area, working with GW students.
So the idea is that you're copy pasting your framework across the country. And I guess in theory, you could have all those partnerships on your own. I mean, I suppose, right? But you would need to build. You need hundreds of employees. You need to have connections with businesses and institutions around the country, and all that's feasible. But it would take a really long time, or there are other hurdles. So the idea is you're saying, okay, you're a regional nonprofit. You're a nonprofit in another region. You have relationships with existing community college, universities, maybe trade schools. I don't know. I guess if they're an educational institution, maybe you have relationships with local employers that want to hire H-1Bs, and so you're basically saying, here's the framework, here's how we did it, et cetera, and you can do it too.
Exactly. And the reality is those local and regional nonprofits, they have the trust of the universities. They have the trust of the, economic development agencies and chambers of commerce. They understand the area better than Open Avenues Foundation could, coming in and trying to create opportunities for international talent to stay in the region. And so what we're saying is we want to democratize what we've built and empower these nonprofits to run their own economic development programs through this fellowship program. I mean, that's really what this does, is it creates a way for companies to retain their talent in the area, and creates a hub of universities also training their students to go work for those companies. And that cycle can happen on a localized and regional basis.
So, okay, so if I am thinking about who I would want to reach to help you scale, is it employers around the country? Is it first various nonprofits around the country that may be sort of at this intersection of maybe technology or labor or education or something? Like, is the first step getting in with nonprofits and then helping them find the talent, find the employers, find the institutions? Or do you first need to get more, employers on board, and then the demand for this to scale around wherever those employers are drives the growth?
It's chicken or the egg. It's actually both, but, and our organization is working on both at the same time, but there's no doubt that companies, we need for universities and for nonprofits, they need to see that there's demand out there, right? They need to see that there's a waiting list of companies that want to sign up for this fellowship for their employees. So my focus right now is, yes, on bringing on the nonprofits into our network, but we have a whole new partnerships team that we've built out of the new Build Fellowship organization, and they're going around the country talking to law firms right now to ensure that law firms can advise their clients and to advise companies that there is an option this coming spring if folks are not selected in the lottery. So our mandate right now and our goal right now is to let people know that there is a plan B for folks, that there's an option when you think there's no option, and getting the word out about that will enable our whole organization to continue to bring that demand to these nonprofits around the country.
Cool. No, good. I love it. And the basis of my question was just to think about, for folks who are listening, to say, oh, that's me. Maybe I should reach out. Maybe I should look into it, et cetera. Really exciting. I love this. And again, as somebody who, for me, I'm out of the immigration game as an attorney, but I'm obviously very much involved still in a number of other ways. The H-1B visa for me is obviously my sort of bread and butter down the road because of what Labor List does, but it by nature comes with so many challenges and headaches and terrible stories of people who spent so many years here on F1 OPT. They built a life. They have a family in some cases. You name it, and then they don't get selected, and they have to figure it out. And layoffs as well. The cycles on the news, of companies laying people off, and then them having 60 days. I mean, whenever that happens, it's like, right. It just sucks. And it's such a shame because we are such a sought after destination for talent around the world. We're a sought after destination for founders who want to try to build here and scale here. And I'm not going to, I can't in good faith say that we're dropping in ranking. I mean, I think talking to people on a regular basis from all over the world, I'm still very confident that people overall want to come to America, believe in the American dream still. They believe that this can happen, but along the edges, there are people who get burnt and who, think otherwise. And I think we have to be cognizant of those voices. We have to be cognizant of those frayed edges, and we have to fix that, nip it in the bud before it becomes a real issue. So, my family, we immigrated here to the U.S. Under different circumstances, but still we're very lucky to have, we came as asylum seekers, right, refugees from the Soviet Union, which on the one hand sucks, but on the other hand was actually, from an immigration standpoint, relatively straightforward, given that we came on a program that allowed us to get our green card and our citizenship, without the kind of headache that H-1B folks, which is crazy to think about. I mean, it's not about the value that my family brings versus, PhD students coming from China or India. It's not about that, but you step out, you step away and you think, okay, these are really bright people that are coming here, getting their PhDs in artificial intelligence. I mean, and they're struggling to get their permanent residency, and they have a job offer. They have a company willing to. I mean, the whole thing doesn't make sense. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. People listening to this, would certainly agree. But it
forced us to get creative. I mean, it's
exactly.
We have to get creative. Congress doesn't make change fast, and it's been decades since H-1B has seen the legislation's seen any change. So we had to work to get innovative within legislation to make this happen for people.
And, just to add to that, I would say that my theory, and, this is not a political statement. This is not, I'm also not I don't work in government, so I can't say exactly how it works in Congress. But my theory is that it likely will not change unless it gets really bad. When it's at your doorstep is when you're like, okay, I got to do something about it. I don't foresee that happening. So I actually like your approach better. We obviously have to continue to advocate for change, even if we're just talking about H-1B or employment. I'm not even talking about comprehensive, just talking about employment based. We have to continue advocating for change. We have to continue highlighting stories of, that are unfair or, economic opportunities that were lost, et cetera. But I also think that there's power in saying like what you guys are doing and in saying, instead of focusing on the bad and how, that should be a lesson for us to make change, let's show you how, if this wasn't an issue, how positive it could be. So you can turn around and say, look at all these people using open avenues who, for whom H-1B is not a friction point. Yes, there's still a cost, there's still the application process, but because there's no issue with the lottery, it's not a point of friction. It is just an administrative thing that you have to check off, file for the visa, do the 5 hours of work. Look how wonderful it's been for the employers that, have certainty in their hiring process. Look at how positive it's been for the individual who doesn't have to stress and worry and, whatever. I feel like sometimes showing a positive, just doing it and then saying, here are the positive results, can actually maybe kind of bring about change a little more quickly or make people think differently about it. from a political standpoint. So
No doubt.
that's
I think we
just
have
a
an
long
awesome story to tell.
yeah, and that was just a long way of saying I like what you're doing and keep doing it. So I'm sure we can go on for another hour, but I want to wrap it up here. I want to ask I've been asking this question recently, and I'm curious maybe to hear your answer for the both of you. You've gone through various iterations, not even just within your careers, but even within Open Avenues. It started with an organization helping folks at the border. You did it. And then you thought, okay, we have the structure, we have the resources, we have the network. What else can we do? You built this organization that helps bring talent into the U.S. And now you're taking it to, it's like 3.0, if you will, where you're scaling it across the world. What do you think right now, given where you are, is the kind of advice that you're currently heeding at your current juncture? This isn't, what would you advise yourself 10, 15 years ago or whatever, but like right now, as you're going through the growth stages, et cetera, what's advice that's top of mind for you right now?
Push into the discomfort, because if we don't, no one else is going to. I mean, this is uncharted territory, right? No one else is pushing into cap-exempt H-1Bs and innovating within immigration legislation to create this new pathway that didn't exist before. And there are days where that's hard, right? Because we know what we're doing is 100% compliant and benefiting the United States and benefiting companies. And we see it as a win-win-win, but it's still not been done. And, we have to continue to do this because, we have a mandate, we feel, to make sure that we create this path. And if we don't, who's going to?
Jeff?
That's good. That's a great one, Danielle. I would say think big, but always be in compliance with the law. And that's what we've done. We've created this incredible program that is fully compliant with the law. We've been audited by the Immigration Service. They like what they see. And we're going to keep thinking big, but always stay compliant.
Said like a true attorney, and I feel the same way.
True.
I love it. Thank you. So thank you both so much. I wish you the best of luck in this sort of new stage of the journey. I hope this has been interesting for folks. I actually we got a comment here from Dave Cantor, who is on your team. Special shout out, David says, to the Dream Venture Labs, the newest nonprofit partner with the Build Fellowship from Open Avenues. So I know you touched on that too. So thank you, David, for the comment. I'm excited to see where this continues to go. I definitely encourage folks to reach out. The website right now is openavenusfoundation.org. Is that right?
That's right. And we just launched www.buildfellowship.com. So that's where we're going to have all the Build Fellowships at all of our partner organizations based out of, and you can learn more about the entire model.
Awesome. So if you're a nonprofit around the U.S., buildfellowship.com. If you're an employer, if you're an H-1B employer, buildfellowship.com. If you're a candidate, buildfellowship.com. If you're a university, buildfellowship.com. Okay.
You got it.
Great. Thank you both so much. This has been just a really wonderful conversation, and so nice to learn about where you're heading. And I'm excited to keep track and hopefully maybe have you back on the show when when you're scaling around the country to talk about how you got there. So thank you both. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Roman.
This was fun. Thanks, Roman.
Amazing conversation. I encourage anybody watching and listening to definitely check them out, especially as we get into H-1B cap season right now, or if you're listening at some point outside of H-1B cap season, you're just interested in this. H-1Bs are highly dramatic, let's just say, visa category. So it's really amazing to have other avenues. I want to thank Lex Reception one more time for being the main sponsor of the show. I love having these conversations, and I think they're valuable for the industry. So having the support of sponsors is really meaningful and helps me, frankly, keep this going. So just for those of you immigration attorneys or other attorneys, really, if you don't know, Lex Reception is a legal intake, reception, and client support service. From answering phone calls and messages in real time to scheduling appointments, Lex Reception provides immigration law firms and other law firms with 24/7 legal answering specialists, so you don't have to worry about missing a call from a client or prospect ever again. They integrate with tech platforms, Clio, Practice Panther, LawPay, and so many more, so they can fit into your current workflow. And for GMI Rocket Show listeners, you get $250 off your first month of service with them. So check them out. Link in the show notes, or just check out lexreception.com. And if you talk to them, let them know you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. So with that, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe out there. See you next week for another episode. And in the meantime, peace out.